One of my favorite details about the world of Game of Thrones / A Song of Ice and Fire is how not only do we not know what the entire world looks like, but the further you get from Westeros within the known world, the stranger things become. You go from knights in tournaments to dragons and blood magic, to people who fly with leather wings, and people with no blood. And don't even get me started on Ashai or Sithorios. Knowing this fantasy universe, of course, these could all be true, but in real life you had stories from Rome about a tribe in Nubia that didn't have heads, or entire continents invented by Greek philosophers out of sheer vibes. If you want to learn about some faraway corner of the world today, of course, you can easily find a book or look up the place online, say from the YouTube channel KhAnubis. But what did people in the ancient world think was out there, past the last port they knew? Why did they believe some places were literally impossible to reach? And what does the way they filled in the blanks tell us about how humans handle the unknown, both then and now? So first, let's talk about the title, assuming I haven't changed it for the algorithm, why the Romans could never cross the equator. Because the thing is, their ships almost certainly could have made the journey, and educated people at the time generally accepted that the Earth was round. But when the map of everything you know looks like this, the barrier becomes more psychological than technological. In the 5th century BC, Parmenides took note of a simple pattern. Northern Europe is cold, Southern Europe is warm, while places like Libya are blazing hot. So, extrapolating from what his world knew, he came up with the idea of 5 climate zones, like bands around the planet. 2 frigid bands in the polar latitudes, 2 temperate zones in the mid-latitudes, i.e. Eurasia and whatever equivalent there was in the south, and a band around the equator called the torrid zone, where temperatures got so hot that nothing could survive. Something that the Greco-Roman world didn't know is that, actually, places like the Sahara get even hotter than the equator. However, as the southernmost place anyone from their part of the world had seen was roughly Somalia-ish, the logic was perfectly sound. They just didn't know it was wrong. However, in true human fashion, people still imagine what might lie beyond this impenetrably hot region. Just as there's a bunch of land up north, surely the world must have a similar landmass south of this torrid zone, like a mirror after Eurasia, or else it wouldn't be balanced. Obviously, with no way to sail to this southern land and ask what the locals called it, Roman authors settle for the unknown southern lands, or Terra Australis Incognita. In the 2nd century BC, Crates of Malus also reasoned that there would be 2 more landmasses in the Western Hemisphere, thereby predicting the existence of the Americas in the most squirrelishly technical way possible. Okay, but what about what people imagined within the borders of the known world? In the late 70s, Pliny the Elder wrote down everything he and the educated elites of his day knew into a series of books called Natural History, said to be the world's first encyclopedia, which you may or may not recognize from that Sam Onoa video. Also, for the record, yes, we are different people. In these books, Pliny talks about, well, a lot of things, but in particular, he talks about what later scholars call the monstrous or Plinian races, living in Africa, India, and Scythia. The greatest hits included the Blemiae, a headless people with their eyes and mouths set in their chest, first hinted at by Herodotus, who called them akepoloi, or headless, and placed them in Libya. The Cynocephali, dog-headed men who communicated by barking, placed in the mountains of India. The Cyapods, or monopods, one-legged men who move by hopping and use their single giant foot as a sunshade, and the Ostomi, a mouthless people who survived only by inhaling scents. The thing is, Pliny didn't describe these peoples as myths or as hypotheses, but as real, genuine fact, and this harkens back to what I said in the intro about Eastern Essos. Descriptions that had to be extrapolated from incomplete accounts, morphed and molded through multiple rounds of telephone. Some of these probably started as real observations that got misinterpreted and garbled over long distances. One modern interpretation of the Blemiae suggests they may have been a real people, and the headless face and chest image could derive from a combat posture. Imagine fighters hunkering down with their heads pressed to their chest behind their shields, seen partially hidden from far away. Simply put, when information travels too far, people turn into monsters. But not always. While the two civilizations rarely ever directly interacted, both Rome and China were aware of the other equally powerful civilization at the other end of the continent, though they saw each other quite differently. China referred to this other empire as Da Qin, or Great Qin, as if to say the other China, or perhaps the other center of civilization. Writers from the Han Dynasty imagined Rome as an orderly place of great virtue, ruled by a king who would willingly step down when disaster struck, which to me kind of sounds like they're describing the Republic, where a pair of consuls would only serve for 1 year at a time. In AD 97, an envoy named Gan Ying was sent to find this Great Qin, traveling through Central Asia and across the domains of the Parthian Empire, reaching a place called Tiaozhi, near a great sea. It was here, however, that Gan Ying was told that crossing the sea would take 2, maybe 3 years on waters that drove men mad. Modern accounts more or less agree that he reached the Persian Gulf, somewhere around Seleucia, and that the 3-year Sea of Madness was entirely made up. After all, Parthia was the middleman in the Silk Road and also had a centuries-long rivalry with Rome, so it was kind of in their best interest for the two sides to not be able to find each other. However, in 166, a Roman delegation did reach China, traveling by sea and entering through Vietnam. While no Roman documents have been found confirming an embassy was sent to China, Chinese records tell of ambassadors sent by Andun, whose name sounds more like Antoninus Pius, but the year this happened in more suggests it was Marcus Aurelius. By the way, if you like videos like this, do consider subscribing. I always hate doing these calls to action, but after 4 years in the 200,000s, the channel's getting very close to 300,000 subscribers. So do subscribe and click the bell icon if you like what you see, and maybe also click the like button so YouTube knows what people think of this video in particular. So some people did reach these distant frontiers. In the 5th century BC, 2 Carthaginian sailors named Hanno and Himilco set off beyond the Mediterranean world. Hanno the navigator led a fleet southward, down the West African coast until they passed the Sahara Desert. Scholars say his party reached anywhere from Senegal to Gabon, but either way, he made it far enough south to see flaming mountains and the tribe of hairy women, a term which through Greek eventually became the word gorilla. So his party killed and flayed 3 of them, because of course. Himilco, meanwhile, who may or may not have been Hanno's brother, sailed northward from the Pillars of Heracles, reaching either Brittany or southern Britain, chasing the tin trade until the sluggish, foggy winds and seaweed-choked waters let him go no further. About a century later, Pytheas, a geographer and astronomer from the Greek colony of Massalia, which we now refer to as Marseille, sailed even further, past Britain to a place he called Thule, where the summer sun barely set and the sea turned into a slushy, half-frozen congealed substance he called a sea lung, though which was probably pancake ice. This would also have fed into the traditional Greek idea of a place called Hyperborea, an eternally sunny paradise at the North Pole, shielded from the rest of the world by a cold wind. Lastly, while Gan Ying never made it to the Mediterranean, 1,000 years later, a Nestorian monk named Rabban Bar Salma did make the journey, reaching Constantinople and Napoli, essentially making him the reverse Marco Polo. Notice something about these explorers and their stories? Other than Bar Salma, they all found some sort of barrier, as if the sea itself was preventing them from going further. Himilco's windless, weed-choked fog, Pytheas' congealed sea lung, Gan Ying's 2-year Sea of Madness, a region of the world too hot for any life to survive, or the ocean being too big to sail across. It's as if the edge of the world wasn't simply the furthest any of us has explored, but a wall actually keeping people from exploring further. So sure, they could have just gone there and checked for themselves, but from their perspective, when they did go, they did find the end of the world. Cape Bojador was considered the southernmost place anyone could sail up into the 15th century, which makes sense with its shallow reefs that extend kilometers into sea. Remember, sailors back then would have liked to sail within sight of the coast for easy navigation, as well as strong winds that would have made it difficult to return to Europe, and even tossed the waves into a spray that might have looked like steam from a distance. The idea of the torrid zone stayed in place all the way up until 1434, when Portuguese explorer Gil Yanes was able to break through this barrier by literally just going around it. Could they have done this the whole time? Maybe, but expeditions like this are expensive, and investors generally don't like the idea of all their money potentially going down the drain just because someone wants to prove a point. They expected these ships to come back. This isn't Kerbal Space Program. And that's the important thing when it comes to exploration. Sure, every generation has its daredevils who have the right stuff to try it. But who's going to pay for their ships and crew? Or spacecraft? The big thing here is we still do this today. Swap the torrid zone for the gargantuan vacuum of space. Swap Terra Australis for the exoplanets we've been finding but don't know whether or not they're truly habitable. And swap Here Be Dragons for whatever we imagine might be living on these planets. How civilizations imagined each other really said more about themselves than anything. Anxious and hierarchical Rome populated the edges of their maps with monsters, while confident and mostly orderly China described the other China as a place of great virtue and good government. And depending on the science fiction writer, our galactic doorstep can be inhabited by friendly aliens willing to work with us, or unfathomable aliens bent on destroying us, or maybe we really are alone. We still stand at the edge of the known, reasoning our way into the dark with whatever data we can cling onto, filling in the blank with a mix of real hazard and pure projection of our hopes and cynicism. Exploration, then and now, is a question of who's willing to go, and of who's willing to foot the bill.